This is the Gerber Principle bushcrafting knife. It's about 3 inches of blade, and it's a 420 HC steel. As you can see, this fire. As you can see, I have a fire. I decided to use this knife to prepare the fire. So I cut up a bunch of wood with it. I've been using this knife for, I don't know, 3 days, just trying to beat it up as much as I can to dull it, and I finally have dulled it. So now I got to resharpen it. To show you how dull it is, it took a lot longer than I would have expected. This steel did very well. Some people kind of hate on it. But because of how this is obviously designed, it still can cut, even though this knife is pretty dull. So when I initially got this knife, the edge was not the worst, but definitely not the greatest. So I sharpened it, and what I used was an Arkansas, well, 2 Arkansas stones, which is what I'm going to use right now. So I'm going to get started sharpening this, and we'll see what kind of results we can get from a Washita Arkansas and a blue black. Those are the 2 stones that I'm going to use. So this is a Washita. It's a 8x2x1. I'm going to get started on it, and then I will move on to the blue black. I'm curious how well it's going to sharpen it now that I've dulled it so much, but we'll see. The 420 HC was, or the reason I was looking for 420 HC is I wanted to use my Arkansas stones to sharpen some knives, and unfortunately some steels you just can't reprofile with even this. This is the coarsest Arkansas. This is a Washita, like I said, and you know, if I had 3V or something and I completely dull the knife, I'm not going to take it to a Washita Arkansas stone. I'm using the stone dry because I can feel the edge on the stone better. It's not a bad idea, especially if you're going to remove a lot of metal. It's not a bad idea to use oil or a mixture of oil, Dawn, and water. A lot of guys do that. I've done that. All right, so just from sharpening, this is my 2nd time sharpening this. This is an amazing knife. Can't say enough good about it. I'm not going to completely review this right now. I just kind of wanted to sharpen it, but I wanted to at least say a few things about it. I already almost have a burr, and this thing was pretty dull. I mean, how I had it before, from how sharp it was, and it took, you know, 3 days of beating it up bad. I was trying to kind of break this thing. I've done a little bit of damage to the rubberized handle. It's a $60 knife. I don't expect too much. Anyway, it took me a lot longer to dull this than I would have expected, and as you've seen me just sharpening it, I already have a pretty good burr on most of the edge already. So that's how easy this is to resharpen. You know, as I said, people kind of hated on the steel. They said, Gerber, why'd you make this excellent knife with such a poor steel? You know, I've seen that in some comment threads. And well, for me, it hasn't been poor at all. It's done really well. It's held up really well. It took a lot longer to dull this thing than I thought it would. And I was beating it up, like I said, as much as I can. And to get the edge back, I'm already pretty much there on one side of this knife, and I've barely put any effort forth. So it's a testament to the steel, if it's heat treated correctly, which that is a testament to Gerber. Obviously, Gerber did a good job. You know, a lot of people will just want super steels these days, and don't get me wrong, I'm not against super steels. I own a knife in VG10. I know people might not consider that as super as some of the other ones. I've had knives in S30V, S90V. Obviously, they're great steels, but they can be much more difficult to sharpen, and I would not be able to use this stone to bring the edge back. So, like I said, my purpose for this was purpose for finding this knife steel was to be able to use my Arkansas stone, or stones. And that's what I'm doing. Now, if you're not a sharpener, I have to admit, the Scandi grind on this knife is a great grind to start sharpening on. It's so much easier to find the angle than some like a 50-50 grind or a full flat grind. You can just really feel the edge or the apex lay right on the stone as you're sharpening it. So it makes it pretty effortless to find the right angle. And all I'm doing is just lowering the apex or the edge of the knife right onto the stone. As soon as it touches the stone, that's the angle I'm using, which is hitting this bevel right here, which is a Scandi grind. All right, I feel, let me see, got a really good, let's say the only spot that's lacking a burr is kind of right here. Now the tip can always be a little trickier, that wasn't good, to find the actual apex. You gotta kind of lift the knife up a little bit. It's kind of hard to see out here. Yeah, I was kind of in the market for a smaller bushcraft knife. I have an Essie Azula, which I thought was pretty cool. I wouldn't call it, I guess, bushcraft per se. Maybe some people use it for small things, but this is my first Scandi ground knife. Oof. And man, if you haven't used a Scandi ground knife before, you're missing out. They're just, what they do is they bite incredibly into wood, which is why people obviously use these for bushcrafting. You can carve with them really well. So yeah, if you haven't tried out a Scandi ground knife yet, I'd just say get this one. Just because it's cheaper. You know, this knife was like $60. Oh yeah, I got an amazing burr already. Woo. Yeah, she's getting sharp with literally no effort. Very good heat treat, Gerber. Very good job on this steel. Very impressed. I definitely recommend this knife. Yeah, I could literally be done with this knife in a couple seconds here. Just basically remove this burr and I would have a perfect edge to go back to splitting wood that I've been splitting. I've been batoning wood, I've been feather sticking, I've been stabbing into wood and trying to break this edge, trying to break the tip. I've been very aggressive with this. I've been hitting the handle even with wood, and yeah, it's held up really well. One fun fact about 420 HC is it's close in toughness to 1095 3V and crewware, CPM crewware, and it's slightly tougher than M4. So you get a very tough yet stainless steel. The corrosion resistance is pretty close to a VG10 or S30V. It's like right below that. So you're looking at a tough and very corrosion resistant blade. So for me, it makes a perfect EDC knife and bushcraft knife. Obviously, you can have carbon steels for bushcrafting if you're just going to be dealing with dry wood, but if it's snowing or raining, this one isn't going to give you any issues at all. All right, so I have created a burr on both sides of this knife, so I'm going to move on to a blue-black Arkansas. Just going to clean some of this load up off of the stone. So yeah, if you want to use natural stones to sharpen, then I highly recommend getting high carbon steels, high carbon stainless steels specifically, and you can use your arcs. Now, one second, let me get my blue-black here. You know, there's a big debate, well, I don't know if it's a huge debate, but it's things that I see people talk about. They say, well, you can't use Arkansas stones with super steels, or you can, yes you can. Well, the answer is yes and no to that question. Can you use Arkansas stones with super steels? Depends on what Arkansas stone you're talking about. Could I use this with super steels? Well, yes, of course. But am I gonna try and apex the knife with this stone? No, not even close. This is meant to be a finishing stone. And these are hard enough. Arkansas stones are measured in density. So when you get to, I'm gonna lighten up the pressure with this since it is a finishing stone. So when it comes to using Arkansas stones with super steels, you can do it. It's just what you want to do is use the more dense Arkansas stones. And the more dense Arkansas stones start with like the true hard, translucent, black, and then blue-black. I have a VG10 knife that I sharpened with diamonds first. I apexed the knife with diamonds and went through a nice progression. They were DMTs. And then I finished on a translucent, and I will tell you, the edge turned out extremely, extremely fine and very good. And that was because I finished on translucent. Translucents are very fine stones and do an amazing job. So you just, you know, like I had said earlier, the only thing I wouldn't do is I wouldn't start a super steel on like a soft Arkansas or a Washita. Those steels are just too complex and too, some of the carbides that are formed in those, you get vanadium and tungsten and all that, molybdenum even, it's just too strong, too hard maybe. And you'll burnish the steel rather than remove it. So the whole point of sharpening is removing metal. Polishing, it's fine, if that's what you're going for, but yeah. Really working on this belly because it's kind of an easy spot to miss. All right. If you've never used a blue black, highly recommend it. It's an interesting stone. It seems to be like a hybrid of the black Arkansas and the translucent, which are, if you haven't tried either of those, I would highly recommend those as well. They're just super, super fine. I consider them ultra fine stones. Others may have different opinions on it, which is fine. But I would call them ultra fine stones. And then I would call the blue black ultra, ultra fine. These stones are measured, like I said, by their density, so we don't really know what grit level they would technically have, but if you've sharpened enough, you can kind of guesstimate by what kind of edge finish you get, how it cuts. And many have estimated this one, the blue black, above 10K, and I'd say that's probably fair. It's probably a fair way to classify it. But the key with this one is light pressure. It's a finishing stone. It's not meant to, you don't want to put a ton of pressure while you sharpen on it. Trying to hurry up a little bit here because I want to do the cut test so that you can see. Hard to see in the dark. It's feeling pretty good. Not as good as I would want to go, but it's getting pretty dark. So now what I'm going to do is use even lighter pressure in order to deburr this. So if you haven't watched my other videos, my 3-step process to knife sharpening is one of my most recent videos. The way you sharpen a knife, or that's at least the way I do, I'd say most people that I've watched do, is you create a burr on each side of the knife edge, and then you weaken that burr that you've put on there by using very, very light pressure. And then you can use a strap, or you can strap on the stone to completely remove the burr. I'm going to use a leather strap, just because I have one. Alright, it's feeling pretty good. Now I'm just going to do one more on this side. Alright. So I'll use a leather strap. I grabbed a Knives Plus 0.5 micron. Figured that would go well with using the progression that I used. I used pretty fine stones. Now I may be doing this a little bit different than some. Some just do it in one solid swipe. That's fine. I have no issues either way. This is just how I do it sometimes. Sometimes I use one solid swipe, sometimes I go in increments of how I strap. Just trying to be pretty deliberate in maintaining that angle. Wondering how my camera's picking up this video at this time. It's getting really dark. I love the old dogs barking. Shh. All right. Ooh, that feels good. I could strap for longer. Hopefully you can still see. Look at that fine edge. That is nice and sharp. That is nice and buttery smooth. Yep, we've got a fine edge again. Just shaving that. Yep, so we have restored the edge on this. Let's see how she cuts paper towel. And this is some pretty flimsy paper towels. This should be a good test. Yeah, we have a very sharp knife again. All right. A nice piece of dead maple. The one thing you gotta watch with this knife is you gotta be almost delicate because it just digs so much. So I'm trying to just barely touch that. I mean, it just digs into that wood. Well, all right. But it does make nice thin feathers. You can definitely get some really thin ones. I was able to actually make this fire with wet wood by just using this blade. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. I definitely advocate for this blade. It is a beast of a tiny bushcraft knife, and the steel is very good. Scandi grind lends for a very bitey edge, and you can do some really fine cutting with it too. You can get some good grips on there, but I definitely recommend this blade for sure. And I think the way they heat treated this was very good. And I've heard Buck also heat treats 420 HC really well. So check out their blades as well. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for stopping by, and we'll see you in the next one.